so good to have you with us this evening, Vijay. Thank you for coming and being part of the conclave.
Thank you very much. You're doing my job from over there, actually.
So you're going to tell me if I'm as good, trying to be as good as you.
Yes, there's a rating chart, actually, as we walk out the door. There's a ratings chart
Really?
as to how good the moderator was.
Okay. Well, Asia's #1 player for 14 years, played Davis Cup for 20 straight years, leading India to 2 finals, winner of 16 ATP singles, 13 ATP Tour doubles, honored UNESCO, how do you pronounce this, Pierre Coubertin Award for fair play, United Nations Messenger of Peace, Padma Shri awardee, the first Indian to break into American mainstream television, and oh my God, there's so much. How do you wear so many hats, Vijay? I'm so impressed.
I thought you were talking about somebody else, actually. I think the most important part of this is the fact that my tennis career is what gave me the rest of it. And one led to the other, and obviously I was very fortunate and blessed to have had the number of things that I was able to accomplish. But I think the more important thing is that the start of tennis for me in my career, my entire career, started right here about 5 minutes away. And that is something that I've always taken with me through my entire career. And I grew up 5 minutes away. I went to school 5-10 minutes away. Certainly, the city has changed, obviously. But to a great extent, the most important part of me is still right here within a 15 minutes radius. And I belong right here.
Wow. And to reiterate that, I was just talking to him a couple of minutes back. After 40 years, and when I said migrated, he said, no, I haven't migrated. He still, though he lives in the US, he still holds an Indian passport. He doesn't have the typical US accent.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very useful.
And he's so proud to carry that little national flag lapel pin. And he's got this amazing pen. I think you should got to display that pen too.
Display my pen?
Yes, with a little Indian flag.
My pen has the same thing. I have a fascination with the flag, actually, which is pretty cool. If you get a chance to get one of these pens, you should get it. It's expensive, very expensive. But I got it for free, so that was pretty useful.
Lucky you, Vijay. So, Vijay, tell me, what is good health to you? I mean, in good health as an individual, good health to our society, and then good health to our nation. What would be your take on general good health?
Well, it's a combination of all of it. Obviously, the physical aspect, the mental aspect, the social aspect, your own dreams and beliefs in yourself, to have the kind of comfort level that you feel with yourself more than anything else. I think the competition we all face is really not as much as the outside world as it is ourselves. And I think that's where the great thing about what a sport does for you. I grew up here, as I said, a few minutes away, and my reason for starting to play tennis was entirely to do with health. I was very unhealthy as a child growing up. I spent a lot of time in hospitals here. I had 4 hours of IV in me almost every day. I couldn't run from here to there. And if it wasn't for my parents, especially my mother, who literally went to school, she sat in class for me on several occasions, took notes and come and taught me in the hospital. And eventually, the bottom line is that the doctors advised me to play an outdoor sport for my health so I could actually go to school like a normal person. And I make a big joke of it because I always say with one set of school fees, both my mother and I were both educated. But I do believe that the great part of the sport, I started because of health. And today at my age, I continue to play because of health. And to this day, unless I have a very high fever, I play tennis and everything goes away. I play for 45 minutes, I enjoy it. It's the physical aspect of it, but I'm playing for a different purpose. I'm playing for wellness, I'm playing for good health, I'm playing because my doctor told me to do so. I'm playing because I can eat the food that I want to eat at night, which happens to be in India all the time. But at the end of the day, I think the aspect of wellness is a combination of the physical stuff that you would want to do, but at the same time, to be able to have that sense of comfort, whether it's in family, whether it's with children, whether it's your parents, your grandparents, with your job, with all of your friends around you. And the moment you have that degree of comfort, I think you honestly feel emotionally well.
So the byproduct is that you're looking the same you looked 20 years ago, and that's the byproduct.
I look the same from 20 years ago. I think it's that wonderful hairstylist around the corner that did it to me. But at the end of the day, I do believe that if you're every 10 years for me has always been a pocket of my life. So every 10 years, you are in fact going to change to some extent. And I do believe that your goals also are likely to change. The challenges are likely to change. The goalposts are likely to be moved. But you got to encapsulate it in about 10 years. You can't do at my age what I was doing at 40 or what I was doing at 20. You got to kind of respect that as well. It's like when you're playing a tough tennis match and a guy hits a good shot, you have to respect the fact that he hit a good shot. So your response has to respect that to some degree as well. So I think a lot has to do with the fact that you have that well-being, which is both physical and emotional.
Absolutely, Vijay. And Vijay, when we were talking, you were saying that how important it was for you to reach out and put a smile in someone's face. So why is that so important for you? I mean, did you go through any particular situation, or you're so passionate to go that extra mile to put that smile in someone's face?
I think it's very important for a simple reason that we've seen too much of tragedy over the years. We've seen too much of sorrow on people's homes and faces in public and in social life and so on. And I think the important aspect of bringing joy to people is a critical element of someone's well-being. If you meet someone at an airport, if you meet someone, as a lot of your panelists were saying before, the ability to put a smile on someone's face, to be able to take pictures when you see them smiling. I like to see people smiling in the picture. I don't like them standing there and you can't tell if it was a mugshot from a police station. And I'm not a big fan of that. I really do need to see them smiling and enjoying the fact that they are with friends, that they're out there to be able to make a difference in the world to the person next to them. And I think that is an important factor for me. In my service at the UN, where I served for nearly 7 years as a messenger of peace, it gave me an opportunity to go and see the work that the UN does in different parts of the world. And it wasn't in New York and London and Paris and Rome and all the fancy places, but it was places like Kosovo and Bosnia and Aceh in Indonesia and northern Sri Lanka and so on and so forth, where you see tragedy striking a country in such a devastating manner, as we've seen recently with Harvey in Houston and Irma in Florida, and this terrible tragedy with the Mexican earthquake and so on and so forth around the world. And we have enough tragedy from natural disasters that honestly we have to stay focused on and say, how do we bring their lives back to normal again? It's a stretch. It is a stretch. It's a long, long, long haul. 6 months Puerto Rico is going to go without power for 6 months. Wow. I mean, can we possibly even imagine that? We have a shortcut, we have an electricity breakdown for 2 hours and we're complaining the AC doesn't work or this doesn't work and so on and so forth. So I think it's so important for us, when we are able and willing and afford it, can we actually put a smile on the person next to you?
Said like a legend. I think he deserves a big round of applause for that. Vijay, you left Chennai, left in a sense that you officially moved residence 40 years back to the US, and you've been coming to and fro. So Chennai, what in your eyes has changed over these 40 years? And has it changed for the better? And what are the big changes that you're seeing right now?
Wow, I need a full bottle of wine for that answer. But I think the world has changed, obviously, since I first left in I played my first English tournaments in 1969. I made my first overseas trip in 1967. My first American trip was in 1972. America has changed to such a great extent. I think to a great extent, the short answer is, India is probably what America was in the 70s.
Exactly.
And the growth is here. The growth is going to continue to be here. Whoever is in charge, it is going to grow. So I think to a great extent, if you look back at the way America grew from the 70s, and they had come off of a terrible decade in the 60s, they had the assassination in 63 of an American president, they went on in 68, and then they had 2 more assassinations with Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, and then they had that bright spot with the moon landing in 1969 that put a smile on their faces and kind of got rid of the 60s, and then when the 70s came along, obviously they had the resignation of a first American president. Things started to move along. So there were a lot of changes as they moved along through the 70s. You got a president who became president without being elected in 74. And then, of course, you had some peanut farmer from Georgia becoming president in 76. And, eventually the Reagan Revolution in 1980, talked about a shining city on a hill, which is where we are today, in my opinion. And then, of course, we went through that Reagan Revolution for 12 years till this unknown governor from Arkansas became president. And so you kind of look through the dimensions of what America went through all through those years till we had the first African-American president, of course, coming in 2000. So and of course, today's president, it's kind of hard to talk about. But at the end of the day, I think, who happens to be also a friend of mine, while I'm at it. But I think the important thing is that India is at that crux, it's at that verge of that growth. And we all have to band together because it's very difficult for one person or one government to actually do it. It's so important for the young of today in India, the youth, which is really the future of this country. And we have to leave the nation for them in a better way than when we first inherited it.
Absolutely, Vijay. So that brings me to a very pertinent question, very related to what you just said. Vijay, that India today is definitely the US of the 70s, and as against youth migrating a decade back, especially the cream of our youth, people who were children who were topping in the IIT institutions, all of them were migrating to the US probably for better job prospects. But today we see a dynamic shift into that, youth are staying back, or they go study, but they definitely come back, and a lot of them are becoming entrepreneurs. So do you think this is a great shift that is happening in India?
Oh, absolutely. I think the opportunities are a lot greater. I think the opportunities to stay in India as opposed to going overseas is much greater than it was 30, 40 years ago. The options are a lot more. Yes, the doctors and the lawyers and the engineers will never go away. And I'm waiting for the day still where some parent is going to tell me that he or she, my son or daughter, is going to be an athlete before he or she becomes a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And that's the hard part for us. Because at the end of the day, the world's greatest risk for any family is to put their child into a sport and say, you know what, you're going to be the next great athlete out of the country. It's too much of a risk because you can do it for 10 years and still nothing can happen. Whereas you can go through school and college and, perhaps get your degree in 4 years. In my case, it took a lot more than 4 years. But you can go through that and you can actually eventually get to perhaps where you want to get to. But as far as the sport is concerned, it's very hard to be a Usain Bolt or a Michael Schumacher or a David Beckham and so on and so forth. It's very difficult to do that because for every one of them that you see, there are millions who don't. And so we don't like to take that risk. We come from a very conservative society, and especially from the southern part of India. We are extremely conservative. School, college, job, marriage, right to live, children. And if you don't have children, the grandparents are on your case immediately. How can I, what am I supposed to do? Why haven't you had children yet? So the pressure continues all the way through, and there's no taking a chance. It's a very simple adage I always use. You see an Indian and an American across the river, we let the American go first, so he'll jump in, see how deep it is, before you can actually walk across. But the Indian will let him go first, which is a very common thing for us to do because we are very safe. We like to play the safe shot. We like to block the ball in cricket. We like to play the 30, 40 points, keep the ball in play. But when you go for broke, that's when fortune favors the bold. No guts, no glory. You have to honestly go for it. No pain, no gain. There are things that you have to do that sport teaches you, in my opinion, more than literally any other profession.
Vijay, can I ask you a tongue-in-the-cheek question?
Go ahead.
When I travel with my husband, he is an alumni of the Harvard Business School, so we have a lot of his classmates from all over the world, and I've realized something. The Indian Americans are more American than the Americans themselves.
The Indian Americans are more American than the Americans themselves. I tell you, not at what time they eat their food. There's no dinner served by an Indian American household before 12 o'clock. Okay, so that's out of the question. The food is more Indian than Indian. So I enjoy going there as long as I can eat early. And as far as we are concerned, they also like to hang out with our Indian folk, so they can, talk Tamil or Punjabi or Kannada or whatever it is, and we like to be within our own environment. So, I tend to disagree with you there, but I think it might be the case when they maybe travel outside the US. And where am I from? Oh, I'm from Houston. I'm from Chicago. I'd just rather say I'm from Chennai.
I mean, you're so different, Vijay. Hats off. Honestly, wearing your patriotism in your lapel.
Thank you.
Honestly, I think that really deserves a big round of applause. You were in the UN for 7 years, Vijay, and let's talk of these natural tragedies as opposed to creating man-made tragedies. We did talk about it right now. But would you like to elaborate a little more when we're talking of man-made tragedies as opposed to natural tragedies?
I think the one thing when we talk about the UN, and I'm sure my dear friend Shashi would have talked about it a little bit in his morning's address. But I think the one thing when we talk about the UN, we tend to discuss all that goes on in the Security Council. And when you talk about the Security Council, which I had the opportunity to visit on several occasions to see the way it runs and to see the way votes are taken and to see the way each ambassador puts his viewpoint forward, his or her viewpoint forward, the interesting thing is the best part of the United Nations is outside the Security Council. It's the 60 agencies or so that they have, all the way from UNESCO and UNICEF and UNHCR and so on and so forth, that does incredible work in different parts of the world under the most trying circumstances. My first assignment when I became a messenger of peace appointed by Kofi Annan, and I was very fortunate and blessed to have been able to work alongside Muhammad Ali and Luciano Pavarotti and Elie Wiesel, the Nobel laureate, and Michael Douglas, the actor, and we got a chance to visit different places in the world that normally you wouldn't go to. And one of the first places they sent me to was 48 hours after the 2001 earthquake in Bhuj in western Gujarat. And so I was on the ground in Bhuj 48 hours after the earthquake happened. And what just struck me as quite incredible was, considering the devastation that had taken place, what UNICEF was able to do with the people on the ground. And they were just there with a bottle of water and a cell phone. And that was it. They didn't know where they were going to stay at night. They didn't know how they were going to get around. But they were there to help the victims of this incredible, incredible tragedy. And that honestly opened my eyes to such a great extent I'd never seen before. To go visit the displaced people, displaced families in northern Sri Lanka and see what they were going through at a time of that terrible war that ensued for many years. So I think when you look at these kinds of things, it opens your eyes to things that where you feel like, can you make a little bit of a difference to your neighbor?
Vijay, you've been such a legend, a Wimbledon tennis player, and then you went on to become, you acted in some very good, Hollywood movies, and then, of course, successfully also you acted in the American television. So you actually switched from being a tennis player to an actor, and right now, a biopic is being made on you, on you. So this kind of, over the decades that you have switched from one career to another, would you like to talk about it? Because we get so fixated that if you're in a particular corporate, even if you're not passionate about it, you keep waiting and waiting and wait for promotions, and there's the job insecurity that if I leave this and do something else, I may not be able to feed my family at the end of the day. But you've kind of broken all these rules. You've just, where's tennis and where's a television and a Hollywood actor? So what would be your message?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is the fact that I keep myself extremely busy being unemployed. And I think to a great extent, that is very much the case because as one of the later James Bond movies, Daniel Craig says, Octopussy. I don't know what an honest job is. But you're right. I think people, we are constantly fixated with how well we can do in our specific profession, which is the right thing to do. You challenge yourself in your respective professions. You try to do better and better on a daily basis. So as a team effort, the company does better. If you're working for a company, do you want to then at some point in time leave the company to start your own business and become an entrepreneur? I don't think there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think to a great extent, at the end of the day, you got to have strength and belief in yourself. That strength and belief has to come from somewhere. It has to come from within. Yes, you get a lot of help from people around you. Yes, you have the greatest team of all. But the one thing, again, that sport taught me was that you can ask yourself of the impossible. Strange things happen when you're pushed into a corner, when you realize, you think that there is no way out, and you're able to get out of that situation because you think you can do it from within. And I think all of these things really matter even in job creation as far as becoming an entrepreneur and so on and so forth. Yes, the early years are going to be difficult. Yes, is it a big risk? Absolutely. But is that a challenge you want to take? Is that a challenge you want to accept? Is that a challenge your family wants to accept? Certainly there are a lot more things you can do and take chances with when you're single. It's tougher when you get married. Male or female, it doesn't matter if you have a spouse. Once you have a spouse, it's a lot more things to think about. And then you have your first child, all bets are off. So I think you have to look at all of this in a matter of speaking and say, what's best for all of us together, but at the same time, I want to also challenge myself.
Challenging oneself.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's why you're such a legend. Vijay, when you've been playing active tennis, you must have faced a lot of stress in the court with millions of people watching you in television. Today, if you have to draw a parallel to any kind of work that you're doing and you're under severe stress, especially when you're probably responsible for a couple of people, how do you deal? Has the practice or your court experiences helped you to deal with stress when it comes to immense pressure, probably from at work or wherever?
Stress isn't bad. As I always say, quote my famous friend, the great Billie Jean King, who said, every challenge is an opportunity, and pressure is a privilege. And it's very rare that we are put in these situations where you have that kind of pressure. I'll give you a little example on how you deal with it. So I was at the tail end of my tennis career, coming up on 35 years of age, and so I wasn't playing that much anymore. And we were playing a Davis Cup match against Argentina in Delhi in the summer. So obviously it was quite warm. So our entire four-man team that we had on the Davis Cup team with me as playing captain, all four of us, I'm proud to say, representing India, all four of us were from Chennai.
Wow.
And that was the first. That was clearly a first. So I'm playing captain. We get on to the first match. My dear friend Ramesh, who also lives about 5 miles up from here, he played the first match, ended up losing the first match, so we love one down. We're playing a team against Argentina, rather, and these two guys, who were number 1 and 2 in Argentina, were both about 21 and 22 years of age. The 21-year-old was ranked 7 in the world. The 22-year-old was ranked 16 in the world. And we were barely ranked. And they had also the number 3 doubles team in the world. So they came in as clear favorites to win that match. So Ramesh loses the first match. I come back out after sitting in the captain's chair in the hot sun. I come back and I managed to win in a 3.5-hour match in that heat. And so we were 1 match all going into the second day. On the second day, the Argentinians, singles players who played on the first day, had the day off. So their doubles team played Anand and me in the doubles match the next day. And after 4.5 hours, we lost 8-6 in the 5th. So I've been on court for 8 hours, and we're 2-1 down going into the third day. And the guy I'm due to play the first match on the third day is the number 1 Argentinian, ranked 7 in the world, 21 years of age, and had the day off. I was nearing 35. I'd played 8 hours of tennis over 2 days, and I was playing this guy without having a day off. So he wins the first set 6-3, he wins the second set 6-3, he's up 3-love in the third, love 40 on my serve. I managed to squeeze out the third set. We go into the locker room, 2-1 down, and the trainer has me on the table, the doctors come and check me out. I've lost about 11 pounds in weight.
Oh my God, dehydrated.
And my manager then said to me, you know, I think you've done extremely well. We're all so proud of you. Let's pack up and go home. You know, we've done as best as we could possibly do. The doctor said, listen, I can't let you go out and finish this match. It'll be bad for your health. So listening to everyone around you telling you to do this, which is when, at that point in time, you go back and think of your growing up. And you think of your time in hospital. And you think of the time when you had those IVs in you. And you think of the time when your mother told you that you can be the best that India has ever seen. And so I said to the manager, let's have the ambulance close by, and we'll have the oxygen tank courtside, but the only way I'm coming off that court is on a stretcher. So I went back on court. We're down 5-2 in the 4th set. And the rest is history. I ended up winning that match 6-2 in the 5th, and India went to the final of the Davis Cup. The point of the story is I tend to tell that story for the simple reason it had very little to do with sport. My point is that all of us have that in ourselves, whether we have difficult times and difficult, impossible situations, whether it's husband, wife, whether it's parents and children, or grandparents and grandchildren, and so on and so forth, within families and so on. We have this constantly in businesses and so on and so forth. This is where we have to ask ourselves, can we achieve the impossible to make life better for us? And so that we can eventually have the final answer of saying, you know what, I did it, and we ended up putting a smile on everyone in my home, as I ended up doing that day, putting a smile on 1 billion people in this country.
So this is going to be my last question, Vijay, before we take on questions. So tell me more about this biopic. I mean, I was so impressed when I was reading about it. And I know you were telling me that this is beyond you, because some people want to make the biopic on you. But then how did this happen, and what's been that journey?
So it's quite strange, because the rights of my life story has been bought by a company in the UK, and working closely with my 2 sons, believe it or not. And it was been going on for about 18 months. I wasn't fully aware of it. But now that they bought the rights to making my life story, I'm really concerned about who's going to play me.
Shah Rukh, maybe?
So who's that?
Shah Rukh Khan will come and kill you.
I tell you, I've seen him do stuff that I never thought he could do. But I think tennis might be a little beyond his pay grade.
Shah Rukh Khan, I hope you're listening to this.
Yeah, this is a real challenge for him, you know. But yes, I think it's going to be interesting. I have no idea. They have rights to it. But I'm just humbled that someone would want to tell the story. But as I said to the Toronto Film Festival, that this life story is honestly not about me. It's about parents, children, compassion, and overwhelming love that someone can have for their children so that they can turn someone who was a zero and turn him into something. That's what it's all about.
So, dear friends, we are open to take a couple of questions. So, I'll request you to, can we have someone to help with the mic, please?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes. 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 No. I get a visa all the time. As a matter of fact, I'm very fortunate to have Mr. Bharat Joshi here because my British visa was about to expire. Now it's not expired anymore. So thank you, Bharat, very much for the wonderful hospitality that the UK always offers me. But you're absolutely right. Yes, I still have my Indian passport. I get a visa for every country I have to go to, and I'm delighted to get a visa to every country I go to.
We have another question in the back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ma'am, you could just identify yourself and ask your question.
We didn't hear you this time in Star Sports in Wimbledon.
Yes, you did not hear me in Star Sports because two reasons. One is the fact that Star wanted to do their own thing and carry the feed, number one. Number two was that for 10 years, BBC had been asking me to do television coverage in London for the BBC. So, because Star decided to go their own way in what they wanted to do, I was very delighted to actually accept the offer from BBC. So I did BBC.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Abdullah. I just want to know what advice do you have for youngsters?
See, I think that there is a dream in every youngster. But the dream has to be driven by what I would call the 5 Ds. The first is the desire. Does he or she have the desire to do what he or she wants to achieve? The next 3 sort of go hand in hand. The determination, the discipline, and the dedication that goes with it. Because those 3 things are literally some of the toughest things you would have to endure. Not just as an individual, but as a family. So the child needs to be encouraged and absolutely helped as much as possible by the family to make his or her dream come true. Once you've done all these 4 things, to the best of your ability, to the best of the family's ability, so given that child the opportunity to realize his or her dream, then you leave it to the 5th D, which all of us fully understand is divine intervention.
So, Kiruba, I think we're running out of time.
Yeah.
That's it? Okay. So, thank you. Thank you so much, Vijay. It's been such a pleasure. And I think we've been hearing things that many people do not know about today.
Well, I'm delighted to have been here this afternoon. I really appreciate Dr. David, Colonel David. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this very, very kind award. I really appreciate it. It'll have a special pride of place in my home as well. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for spending the day here and hearing what wellness is all about. I think it's a critical element that we all face across the world at different age groups and different age brackets. But it is something certainly that can be overcome with some sport, with some joy in bringing joy to the next person around you, and making sure you have joy in your heart that comes out within the family and the social circle around you. So bring that out of yourself, because every single person that we know has that joy in his or her heart. And I think once that comes out, the world will definitely be a better place. Thanks so much.